Well, greetings. This is David Zaitsev. Thought I'd bring some more comments on the subject of sexual assault of girls in junior high and high school. Although, from some perspectives, I'm not an expert. From some perspectives, maybe no one should pay attention to what I have to say. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. All we know is that a few weeks ago in Tumwater High School, one of the counselors produced a video with some others. They said, talk to your daughters and sisters and girlfriends about sexual assault because it's very prevalent. And I'm single, don't have any daughters. I have a sister who's married in Texas, probably not being sexually assaulted. I do have friends in church, but they don't talk to me about that. And let me see here. So the question is, do I really have an interest in that topic? I'm not sure that I do, but I'll offer some thoughts, and you folks can decide if anything I say is useful or not. Now, before I go on, I need to mention something that relates to this discussion. I grew up Mormon, and or Latter-day Saint, whatever you want to call them. Latter-day Saints have a history of religious persecution. Their founder, or leader, was shot in a jail, put to death, and some others of their leaders were killed, and I actually have an ancestor who was put to death by being bayoneted or stabbed with a corn seed or whatever it was in Hans Mill. His name was Thomas McBride. And I left the LDS Church in 1985 and learned a lot about God and Christian history, and one of my heroes at that point in time were, well, they were fed to lions, boiled in oil, crucified, burned at the stake, everything else bad that could happen to you. And so, although sexual assault, whether you define it as rape and attempted rape, or groping, or butt swatting, from my point of view, it's a little bit smaller in the scheme of things than being burned at the stake and boiled in oil. And I realize that it is a concern and it is a problem. At the same time, it's a lesser problem than some of the other problems that have gone on in history. Back 2,000 years ago, when you were baptized as a Christian, one of the first things that happened to you was that the fellow baptizing you, or the priest, or whoever it was, they would slap you. As they slapped you, they would say, you should be persecuted, be ready. And I suppose that if you want to say that 1/4 or 1/3 or half of high school girls, by the time that they've graduated, have been sexually assaulted, that would probably be including being groped or butt patted or butt swatted or whatever it is that's of a lesser nature than some of the other sexual assaults. Yeah, we can warn them. To me, all these girls that grow up in our society should be trained on how to slap someone. And they should all be trained in how to give a stern, discouraging look. Like, be trained to do that to a guy. You should be trained also to go like this to a guy. Now, a number of years ago, there was a TV show, Dukes of Hazzard, and then they made it into a movie. In the movie, there was Jessica Simpson. She played a waitress in a certain restaurant or bar, and at one point, she's serving 3 guys at a table, and one of them reaches out and touches her butt. She responds by clobbering the guy, which might be a little bit excessive, but at least I think it's in the right direction, because there are some things that I think don't need necessarily to be solved by the authorities if you don't need to solve it with the authorities. You can solve it with that. And if you solve it with that, well, you've communicated your message. Guy knows, hey, she doesn't like this, better not do it again. That may be the end of it. In the Bible, there's a Short passage, Matthew 18, 15 through 18. Someone sins against you, rebuke him, and if he doesn't listen to you, then take 2 or 3 others and rebuke him again. But if he doesn't listen to you and the others, tell the church. And if he doesn't listen to the church, consider him as a publican and a heathen. But the first step in that process is you personally rebuke him. Now in our society, for whatever reasons, we tell the people, or some of the people, if someone does something, call the authorities. If someone does something to you with serious risk of injury or death or violence, tell the authorities. If someone says something relatively minor that you can solve on your own, you might be better off confronting him yourself. We'll give you a few examples. A few months ago, there was a shop teacher in Walla Walla, and he was reported to be improperly touching 2 girls and 1 boy in the first month, basically, of school. And one of the girls he apparently touched on the butt between 10 and 15 times. Eventually the police were called in and they investigated and they filed like 2 different reports for the prosecutor, and then the prosecutor decided not to file charges. Now, you know, there's a girl who was touched 10 to 15 times, apparently didn't like it. Does she feel bad that the prosecutor did not file charges? I don't know. You know, what could have happened the first or second time, she could have turned and looked at this guy with a stern, negative, discouraging look. You know, some of your stern looks, you want to reduce your eyebrows and eyelids. So that, you know, when we're interested and happy about something, we open up our eyes. Want to discourage something, we may close our eyes, look intently with some displeasure. That's a basic discouraging look, at least one I think of. And there is, wow. Now, if someone has touched your butt, either intentionally or unintentionally, probably not going to be charged with assault if you slap him. Question is, should some of these girls be slapping some of their shop teachers when they touch their butt? If it were my daughter, I would have trained her. Some situations, you want to slap the guy. And that's whether he's a shop teacher or whether he's your date and he's touching your breast while kissing and you don't really think that's such a great idea. You might say no, that's okay. You say no and he continues, slap. Those things actually can be considered sexual assault because they're unwanted, uninvited touching. They probably get included in some strange statistics that then are magnified into umpty-ump number of girls are sexually assaulted. Maybe they are. I'm not saying they're not. The question is, how do we want to deal with it? So there was the situation in Walla Walla. Guy touched 3 people, 2 girls, 1 boy. For whatever reasons, the prosecutor decided not to prosecute. Guy decided to retire. Girl, I don't know how she feels. Perhaps she feels she was not properly heard, even though it happened apparently a dozen times. So, I'm not sure if I have a lot more to say other than the fact that people, in some situations, can take a step on their own to solve things. The step can be a stern look or a slap on the face. I don't necessarily regard slapping someone on the face as wrong or evil. I think that in a lot of cases, a slap on the face is probably the right thing to do for all these girls from 5th grade to 12th grade. Could be a co-worker, shop teacher, custodian, school kid in the hallway. You don't necessarily want to do that the first time if you don't want to. Maybe you want to look at him sternly. Maybe you want to look at him and say, hey, that's not a good idea. That means it kind of is okay. Depends on who it is and what you think of the guy. But for some people, you're going to look at him with a stern look. For some people, if they are doing it repeatedly, or if they're really out of line, say they're your teacher instead of your fellow student, yeah, slap them. You know, a lot of girls, they have what seems to be to them the choice between doing next to nothing, calling the authorities. In Matthew 18, as well as in diplomacy and negotiations in the real world, there's usually like an escalation, possible escalation of reactions. You know, you do this and we settle. Or you don't do this and I bring more pressure. If you don't do this and I bring more pressure, we bring even more pressure. And so one thing that girls need to learn is how to gradually escalate the pressure to cause someone not to do something. And so you don't have to necessarily jump from nothing at all to police reaction. You can go from nothing to a stern look to a slap. Those things aren't working, then police action, yes. If it goes from 0 to police action, it takes a while to get to police action. There was this guy in a different place in Washington just recently. Apparently he touched 17 or 18 young girls' behinds in the space of about a month. He was a school custodian. He'd go out during the periods when class was changing. His name was Matson. And apparently it took the girls quite a while to realize he was doing this intentionally. He admitted it, but he's pled innocent in court. So in any case, you know, your butt is being touched. Look at the guy, see if you can figure out his intention. You have a choice to react. You know, look with a negative look, blink at him, slap him. Do lots of stuff. Or if you really need to, also tell the principal and or the authorities if that's what you really want to do. If you can accomplish what you need to accomplish by a look, by a slap, that may be what's the best. But I'm not God. I don't necessarily know for each and every one of you that watches this, for each and every case, what's the best thing. I just know that if it were for me or for people that I had influence over, I'd want them to have those possible reactions, those tools that they could use if they felt they were appropriate. Thanks.